Coming up on today's Philadelphia 76ers now, Sixers fans react to James Harden calling Daryl Morey a liar and saying he doesn't want to play for Maury or the 76ers again. Now, in case you missed it, I'm sure you saw it, but for those of you who did not, this is what James Harden had to say at an event in China when he was taking some questions from audience members. He said, quote, "Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Let me say that again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he is a part of." So, continued drama with this basketball team, which has been ongoing for my entire lifetime, 31 years of existence, and continued drama with James Harden, who continues to pout his way and demand trades out of 3 consecutive organizations: the Houston Rockets, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Philadelphia 76ers. That paired with the fact that he's a declining player with diminishing athleticism, and he needs to increase his value as much as possible. He has a player option that he opted into here of $35.5 million. If he doesn't play this year, there are going to be legal ramifications, I would imagine. And there's no team out there, as James Harden right now is 33 years old, that's going to give him a multi-year deal worth the money that he feels as though he deserves as a 10-time All-Star. So let's open up the floor here and take some of your questions, but also your comments, because I'm sure a lot of you are just fed up with this team and James Harden as an individual. Lion Fighter getting us started here with a 76 Super Chat. $7.60. You're a real one, my guy. I'm really losing faith with this organization. I feel Elton Brand is unqualified, and Daryl Morey is losing his marbles. I think a lot of people out there can relate, and I agree. I'm losing faith in this team, and I wake up on a Monday after I was live for 9 hours the last couple of days doing some live coverage of the NFL preseason, and I'm like, man, I'm trying to get a breather to recover here, and James Harden says this all the way out in China. Shams Charania tweets it out. And the drama, it seems as though it just never stops with this team. And it's unfortunate, right? Because they make a great move at head coach with Nick Nurse. And I'm thinking that the Sixers are going to get on the right track. But then James Harden goes about this offseason in this manner, and the Sixers decide to not trade him away. I think they have to trade him away in order to just get rid of this dark cloud that is hovering over this organization. And if they go into training camp with this matter not resolved, it's not going to be good. It is going to be a distraction. As for Elton Brand, he's clearly unqualified with the moves that he made. He signed Tobias Harris to a deal that right now is paying him about $40 million. He's the one who hired Doc Rivers, made some other roster moves. And for Daryl, he continues to be one of the most overrated executives in all of professional sports. Ashen with this man is beyond unreasonable, but he was never going to help us win. He doesn't care about the game enough. Maxey is the future, and the quicker Harden is gone. So let's break this down section by section here. James Harden has always been unreasonable. My issue with him is that he's never taken accountability. My problem with James Harden as a player, to get to that second part of him never helping Philadelphia win, I don't believe that his style of offensive basketball is conducive to winning in the playoffs because it's really never worked. Outside of 2018, if Chris Paul didn't get hurt, maybe the Rockets win that NBA championship, and we look at Harden and Maury as different individuals, right? Because if they won that title when they should have beaten the Golden State Warriors, it could have been different. They could have had a good opportunity there to beat a bad LeBron James Cleveland Cavaliers team. But when you milk the shot clock and when the ball dies on the offensive end of the floor because you dribble for 20 seconds of that shot clock, and then if you can't create for yourself, you dish it out to somebody who has to chuck up a three, or you're trying to dictate offensive play by drawing a foul, and you don't get those fouls in the postseason because physicality flies, it's just not a winning style of basketball. We've seen that happen with Philadelphia. Now, I didn't love James Harden as a player then. I've never really liked him as a player, because of the reasons that I talked about. But it was a win to trade away Ben Simmons, who literally was not playing, for Harden, who did play and did help you reach the second round of the playoffs, and against Boston had 2 great games. Outside of that, pretty much a no-show. As for Tyrese Maxey, I do believe he's the future. The question then becomes, can Tyrese Maxey be a co-star next to Joel Embiid? And at this point, do you trade James Harden away just to get rid of this drama, just to escape the depths of dysfunction, and you bring in role players to surround Maxey and Joel Embiid to try to win that championship. Because you have to make Joel Embiid happy at some point. Because if you don't, he could be the next superstar player who demands a trade. Martian Lynch, always been a constant supporter of what we do here on the show. I don't think I've ever seen an organization who had the world of the NBA in their palm of their hands just push every single wrong button like the Sixers have over the last decade. Can we take a look at what has happened, Jack, with the Sixers over the last decade? Because this is problematic, and it literally covers the last decade. Derek Bodner doing a good job of kind of outlining some of this, and then I added some of my own notes here. In 2013, this was the start of the process when the Sixers traded Drew Holiday, an all-star, to tank. In 2014, they drafted 2 players who did not play. In 2015, Philadelphia drafted a third straight center, Nerlens Noel, Joel Embiid, Jahlil Okafor. In 2016, they hired Brian Colangelo because Adam Silver pressured the Sixers organization into parting ways with Sam Hinkie. In 2017, Markelle Fultz was the number 1 player in that draft class, in my opinion. What he was at Washington, great player. But then, mysteriously, he couldn't shoot the basketball any longer. He had the yips. There was a hitch in his jump shot, and the Sixers traded him away for James Ennis. Think about that. James Ennis traded away from a number 1 pick only in 2017, and they traded with Boston and passed up on Jason Tatum for that. How about the trade of Zaire Smith? They traded for Zaire Smith by trading away Mikal Bridges. Can you imagine if they had Mikal Bridges? That trade sucked. In 2018, Colangelo is caught trashing Joel Embiid on Twitter with burner accounts. What? In 2019, they traded away Jimmy Butler and they brought in Josh Richardson. That didn't work. In 2020, this was a backwards process of firing their head coach, hiring a head coach, then hiring a general manager. Oftentimes, you want the general manager to hire his guy, and then a couple of years later, it's Daryl Morey who's firing Doc Rivers. In 2021, Ben Simmons demanded a trade. In 2022, the Sixers are investigated for tampering because they wanted to bring in players that James Harden wanted to play with, and Daniel House and P.J. Tucker. And in 2023, it's now James Harden demanding a trade. So whose side are you on with this entire situation here? Is it Harden? Is it Daryl Morey? Let me know down in the comment section. This really is unbelievable, but it's actually believable because of the track record with Philadelphia and then the track record with James Harden here. Mind my business, Ron. Harden isn't wrong, but he's going about airing and addressing his grievances the wrong way. This is a byproduct, though, I believe, and you make some good points, Ron. This is a byproduct of the NBA allowing players to have too much power, where they sign these long-term extensions, and then they secure the bag, and they know, I'm set with my financials, right? I have my bag. I'm going to be sitting pretty for generations to come with me and my family. But then if it doesn't work out, they demand a trade, and they refuse to go to training camp when they sign the deals, and they should be honoring their contracts to a certain degree. And for James Harden here, Q&A in China, he knows there's cameras out. Shams Charania tweets it out. And he calls Daryl Morey his biggest fan for his entire career, the guy who's traded for him twice, who supported him almost to a fault. He calls him a liar and says he never wants to play for him again. It's unprofessional for sure, but that's what James Harden has become over time. Kevo Bueno, I'm with Maxey. Harden could kick rocks. Harden wants a max deal. He's not worth it. That's why Harden opted into his desk, because he wasn't getting a max deal for any team. You meant deal, I imagine. And that's exactly what's so ironic about this. James Harden wanted to go back to Houston. Houston didn't want him. And he's like, oh shit, I'll get paid by another team. I'll get a multi-year deal. I'll make a lot of money. Oh shit, no team's willing to pay me now. I have to opt into my deal. Otherwise, I'm not going to get a deal that I think I'm worth. And I'm going to get that guaranteed $35.5 million. I'm going to opt in. And again, this is the problem with the current construct of the NBA, where he opts in. He's like, I'm getting $35.5 million, but you know what? I'm not playing for a liar again. I'm not playing for Philadelphia. I'm demanding a trade. So for James Harden, the lack of accountability, how he goes about this, pouting, adding weight, not being in shape, which then leads to a hamstring injury and a decline in production, him secretly letting it be known that he was unhappy last year as the Sixers are trying to chase a championship with the MVP of the league. I don't agree how he's gone about it either. We have you covered with year-round Sixers coverage. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button here on 76ers Now. We're approaching 12,000 subscribers. We went live immediately when we saw this situation unfolding. Hit that sub button here. Martian Lynch, can Joel Embiid ask out already? I hate a slow-moving train wreck. It feels as though this is a slow-moving train wreck, right? Where it almost seems inevitable that this year might be a disaster. It's unfortunate because you kind of feel like the Sixers season might be over before it's even started. I will say if Daryl Morey does trade away Harden and the Sixers bring back some quality pieces, that'll get the fans engaged and excited once again because at least we know we have Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. And we have a better coach in Nick Nurse as compared to Glenn Rivers, right? But I think that Daryl Morey is going to drag this out, and it's going to be a standoff just like it was for Ben Simmons, which Sixers players and Doc Rivers admitted at the time. Glenn Rivers, I keep saying Doc, fully admitted that that was a distraction. And how can it not be? We're talking about humans here. The human nature element of this is real. So Embiid, if this season ends up being a disaster, it wouldn't surprise me, and I've continued to say this, if he demands a trade next offseason, and then what happens for Philadelphia? They signed Tyrese Maxey to a contract extension, and they have to rebuild once again. And once again, we're talking about a team that can't escape the second round. We could go to that Michael Thomas one. I'm really not on either side. That's cool, too. Maury should not have traded for Harden. Harden is not even close to the player he thinks he is. He is not great. He's a good player. That's it. Daryl Morey did say that the Sixers wanted to trade for Tyrese Halliburton, and then the Kings backed out of that deal. That would have been the better deal. But there's always pressure when you have Embiid, when you have a high payroll, to try to maximize that current title window and bring in another star. And you traded away, again, a player who was not playing in Ben Simmons, who, him and his career, I mean, it's gone off the deep end. Ben Simmons can't even play anymore. He looks to be mentally rattled. So for a guy who had no value at all, who wasn't even playing, you got back James Harden, who 2 years ago wasn't great. This past year was pretty solid. Led the NBA in assists, career best assist-to-turnover ratio, second best three-point mark of his career. It was a win with that trade, but now it's ended up being a disaster. And again, this is where Daryl Morey's, relationship with James Harden and all of that has kind of come at a fault. And yes, you're right. He's a good player. He's not a great player who's making $35.5 million. Merquan Wilson is going to be up next year on 76ers Now as Sixers fans continue to react to all of this. Isn't it a violation of a player's contract to trash your organization publicly? He should be fined and stripped of his contract and forced to sit out the season. I don't know if forced to sit out the season, but I wouldn't mind if he's fined and stripped of his contract because at some point when you're running a business, like Adam Silver is running the NBA, at some point you can't allow players to have this amount of power. You can't allow them to strong-arm organizations into making a deal. And this isn't great for the NBA because the Sixers are the fourth largest media market out there. They have a nationwide and worldwide fan base. Since 2020, they're top 3 in wins. They have the reigning MVP. And while they've made some bad moves and they've misfired and they've shot themselves in their own foot, they're a major brand in the NBA. So this isn't a good look for Philadelphia. It's not a good look for James Harden. It's not a good look for Daryl Morey. It's not a good look for the NBA either. And the player empowerment era continues to be a problem across the NBA, and Adam Silver is to blame because he is enabled and he has allowed all of this to transpire. Now, a lot of people are saying in the chat, James Harden is a good player, not great player. He's a top blank player in the NBA. Where does he fall? Let me know down in the comment section here. Old school DA, Maury brought in Harden to be the Robin to Embiid's Batman. Harden wants to get paid like Batman. It wasn't only Harden that didn't show up for the postseason. Be honest, Harden wants to go. Okay. Joel Embiid for sure has to be better in some of these big moments. And I think that's why Harden is feeling dissatisfied and he's disgruntled. But also at the same time, I think that Joel Embiid is also feeling some pressure of coming up short. You know, he wins MVP. It probably should have gone to Nikola Jokic. I had advocated for Embiid to win MVP, but we saw what Jokic did in the playoffs, and Embiid has never been able to go on a playoff run like that. And Embiid saw Jokic play that way and win a title, and now he's like, I can't even get my team out of the second round. I continue to be injured. I continue to be out of shape because of some of those injuries and because of my lack of preparedness. I continue to not play well in some big games. I thought it was ugly for Joel Embiid to basically be a no-show in Game 7 against Boston. He gave up. He's a little bit mentally soft. He did say he wants to come into this season in the best shape of his life to lift this organization. So he's clearly feeling the pressure, and he knows he's come up short. At least he's taken some accountability. James Harden has never. Merquan Wilson with the $2 super chat. It's a first-time super chat. 2 claps for Merquan. We appreciate you, brother. Harden void his contract. I'm interested to see once again what the legal situation is going to be here from the Sixers and the NBA if this continues. Because remember, Philadelphia, they withheld Ben Simmons' contract, and then they came to a solution. We'll see what happens on this front. Appreciate everybody for watching our Sixers fan react show today, and appreciate everybody for being a part of it. Make sure you subscribe for year-round Sixers content.